All right, hello and welcome to another installment of the Poet's Voice reading series sponsored by Black Moss Press. My name is Alicia LeBay and I'll be your host this afternoon. And with me today, I have three poets joining us from across Ontario. So I've got Keith Inman here. Keith Inman has written 6 books of poetry. His most recent is The Way History Dries from Black Moss Press, published in 2020. He is the author of the war poems Screaming at Heaven and Seizia, also from Black Moss Press. He's earned a handful of grants, and his collections can be found in libraries across North America, the National Library of Ireland, the Central Zurich Public Library, and the usual gallery of outlets. His books tend to work like novels. His themes link characters to landscape. Welcome, Keith. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Next, we have Eva Kolacz, and she is a poet and painter whose works are inspired by the multifaceted nature of both the interior and exterior world. She published her first book of poems, Whatever We Are, with Hidden Brook Press in 2019. And after graduating from the Fine Arts Department of the Ontario College of Art and Design in Toronto, she participated in numerous exhibitions in Canada, the United States, and Europe. Her works have become part of the permanent collections of the Ontario government and major museums of Poland. Her art and poetry are featured in Fire and Water, a collection of love poems between Eva and her husband. Welcome, Eva.
It's a pleasure. It's a wonderful moment to share with you and all our book.
And last but certainly not least, we have Laurence Hutchman. He grew up in Toronto. He received his PhD from the Université de Montréal and has taught at a number of universities. For 23 years, he was a professor of English literature at the Université de Moncton at the Edmundston campus. Hutchman has published 10 books of poetry, co-edited the anthology Coastlines, the Poetry of Atlantic Canada, and edited in The Writer's Words. His poetry has received numerous grants and awards, including the Alden Nolan Award for Excellence, and have been translated into French, Spanish, Dutch, Italian, Polish, Bangla, and Chinese. Last year, he was named Poet Laureate of Emory for North Toronto. Please join me in welcoming Laurence.
Yes, it's great to be here to share poetry with you and the larger world.
So thank you, all three of you, for taking the time to join me today. And I would like to start this discussion off with a question for Eva. So you're both an artist and a writer, and as far as drawing goes, one can be moved to write poems in the same way as I think as one can be moved to draw. And so I wonder, is that same impulse there for you when you draw as it is when you write poetry?
I think that art and poetry through centuries complement each other. And when we started to work on collection of love poems and erotics, I was tempted to do illustrations. And it was quite a task because our poems are very intense, passionate, coming not only from actual experience, but also from our imagination. So I was thinking how I will do this particular paintings in such a way, playful way, that they not only correspond to certain poems, but also will bring excitement to reader. And I use on purpose very long, smooth, soft lines, not to make overpowering poems. So I think that at the end, I succeeded. And this book is a collection not only of poems written for each other, but also collection of drawings. The other thing, as a painter, I felt tempted to do to this painting, to put painting on the page, book cover. And I was going through many favorite painters who over the centuries illustrated love. And I found the one which I loved so much that I decided to make a painting based on Chagall's painting about two lovers called Equestrian. It was done in the Parisian area when he was living there in 1931. So, but I was trying to bring something of our feelings to it, something which will be magical in our way. So as a two poets being in love, I thought that horse will represent in my painting Pegasus. So it's more magical. It's not actual horse, but rather colorful, magical, almost unreal horse. And Laurence is a man who embraces women. And this is, I think, a cover which is extremely important for this book, because right away it draws attention to potential reader that this book is dedicated for lovers.
I have a question now for Keith, and I feel that this sort of picks up on what Eva was talking about, poetry and art influencing each other. Now, Keith, a lot of the poetry in this collection focuses on linking the characters to the landscapes, whether it's their moods or their relationships or their pasts. My question is, in these poems, does the landscape shape the character, or do your characters shape the landscape around them?
The short answer is both interior and exterior. For me, one of the people I was told, or my mentor got me reading, was Kenneth Miller, aka Ross MacDonald, who wrote, detective fiction. His PI was Lou Archer back in settings was 1930 California. And he used to set the pace or follow it and lead with landscape tied to the action, what's going on. An example would be if Lou Archer's standing outside a house in the dark, the night setting in California, and the deceased is lying inside in a pool of blood. Archer will go outside and see a red taillights of cars going up the mountains in the darkness toward LA. Well, it's leading the whole story to he's got to go LA next, is how it goes on. I mean, that's just, it's not a very good example, but he does it so succinctly. It's just amazing. Another one I like following is, or a style I base off of, is Alistair MacLeod. I always think I write modern fairy tales. I mean, if you look at MacLeod's short stories, in the first paragraph alone, you have when, where, who, what. It's kind of fairy tale style. Once upon a time, a prince and princess, or from faraway place, a prince and princess went down the road and met a dragon. And it's kind of the same thing. I don't know if I answered your whole question there, or kind of rambled a bit, but.
No, that's good. So this next question is focused more to Eva and Laurence, but you can certainly chime in if you feel you can answer this one as well. Now, Eva and Laurence, and maybe we'll start with Laurence first. This is a book of love poems. It's almost like a series of letters you've written to each other, love letters. And the question is kind of like, why would you want to share these very personal things with the world?
I think it's because it's an essential element of your life. When you meet someone, when I met Eva, I knew my life had changed. And one's always writing about transformation, or kind of that integral metamorphosis which contains the emotional and the soul, the body, the physicality. So when we meet someone like that, it changes your life. It's a major event, and it nourishes us. When you think about literature, and I often think there should be more love poems. We think about Chaucer, The Wife of Bath, and Shakespeare's sonnets, and we compare it to a summer's day, powerful sonnets. You think about William Blake and The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, Lord Byron, Don Juan. And then we have our Canadian poets, our best poets. What's the subject they write about? What's the one that people are often very interested in? Is love, passion, sex. And that's what, that's where the energy is, what Lorca called duende. It's powerful energy. So that's what you write out of. That's what you create from. And it's amazing when you find someone who shares your feelings on all levels.
And it's like process of discovery of new emotions. And as you know, we were separated for 3 years, and the book contains, Laurence was living in New Brunswick, teaching at the university, and I was in Ontario. So there was the period when our love was growing, and we experienced longing. And we imagine many poems. It's not only that we went through certain scenes, that we experienced them, but we use kind of artistic trick. It's like artistic creation, that you imagine scene and you will write poem, and you expect your lover to respond to it. That's why this book started to be created almost 10 years ago. It's unbelievable, but now we're looking at this and we laugh. We love the scenes of this book, and it's a pleasure. And as Laurence mentioned, to share with the world. It's the most important. Every poet wants to communicate, and Keith wants to communicate with his audience, and about when he writes about war, and trying to go say to people how important and precious is life.
I find too that the individual experience, actually sitting down and writing the poem, can be a very subjective poem. But if it's a good poem, it transcends the subjective and moves towards the universal. And that's what the reader sees. And I think in the universality, almost the kind of mythical quality that the poem sometimes.
And you mentioned, Keith, poems about being mystical, about
on this pilgrimage, seeing right from different points of view on his pilgrimage in Spain.
Yeah, I like to step a little bit with my favorite Maya Angelou. Recently, I was going through this book, Letters to My Daughter, and I found her salute to older lovers. I commend lovers, she's saying. I am enheartened by lovers. I am encouraged by their courage and inspired by their passion. And there is a beginning of her poem. I have come to speak of love, of its valleys and its hills, its tremors, chills, and thrills. I have come to say, I love love, and I love loving love. So this is what we feel with our book. This is love for loving love.
Very good line. Excellent.
From excellent, excellent writer.
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
So you both spoke a little bit about how this book came about, and I think this would be a good segue to ask Keith about The Way History Dries, because you described this book of poetry as a novel and a series of poems. And my question is, do these poems, does this book begin, did it begin as one poem, or did it begin as an idea for a narrative that then you filled in with poems?
Well, it actually came from the journey itself. I did walk the Camino Francis, which is actually 800 kilometers from France to the Compostela de Santiago, which I like the translation of that, which is Starfield of St. James. What I did, because I had a collection of poems, we had all these photographs my wife and I took, and we had books that we bought and all the travel information. And so then I kind of congealed it all together, and I sat down and spent, well, the walk took 40 days. So I spent 40 days, this was before the lockdown, mind you, and I just kind of retraced the step, brought out all the pictures from the first day, brought out all, what I had written down. And actually, it kind of congealed around the poem in the pocket, because from the League of Canadian Poets, because we were walking in April, that was going on. So I started on the trip handing out poems to people, got some interesting reactions, some great, some, nice. But so I had a small kind of collection to go from. But after that, it just expanded, and I used the 40 days, like just imitated the trip to expand it out. It's an interesting experience doing it that way. I've never done it that way before. The only thing I'll add is generally, I don't start with direction. I let things develop.
That's a great
idea. Even my characters, I guess I'm a bit of a chicken. I don't write about people I know. I take 3 people I know, create a new character. I mean, it's better for my conscience and better for their privacy. So, and with history, the people that I created, I had to really change a lot and develop the characters, bouncing them off each other, and just create this group of characters based on real people, but of a collection of character traits. It was actually quite fun to write.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a fascinating journey. Real pilgrimage.
And you were very lucky, because Spain was closed later, and Italy and all Europe
yes
suffered.
When you think about it, often, poems are kind of like pilgrimages, or even micro pilgrimages.
Yes, exactly.
They're journeys. And so we begin in one place, often like Dante in a dark wood, in some kind of area of confusion or amazement, disorientation, and moving into the wood, and then being transformed by it, by various things. So this idea of pilgrimage is really an essential one for poetry.
And spiritual journey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, even when people are writing from the internal eye, it's an inward journey. This one sort of reflects both. It's outward, but inward also. I mean,
that's the important one. And the Romantics poets all talked about that intense inner journey. And that's what I think we're always aiming for, to get as close as we can to that inner sense, that almost phenomenological change that happens to us when we're undergoing some kind of very dramatic experience. And this is where poetry's come. And as you said, it's not directed. It's like Keith said, negative capability. Not striving after reason, but just letting the poem happen, being aware of it.
Yeah, it started with first line, first thought, and then it developed slowly into something which you start to embrace, or you just cut off the lines and it went to garbage. But most of the time, when we have this spiritual journey, you're able to go deeper and deeper, and then the lines will suddenly arrive themselves, which is beautiful.
What happens in your poem, I'm already aware when I read your poem that you're constantly changing, from one line to the next, and you will suddenly have a break, and sometimes it's hard for a reader to follow. But in that hardness is the wonder and discovery of the poem. So the line breaks, the jump, and the movement of image from idea, and so on. It creates that inner sense of the interiorization of the poem, and finding connection to the outside world we were talking about earlier on. So that's really an exciting kind of juxtaposition. Watching the red lights going off into the distance, and the detective, and wondering if there's a connection, and what is the connection. Wonderful.
So we'd like to hear you reading your favorite from this special trip.
Sure.
I think this is a good time for poem reading.
Okay, I'll read. The Camino is broken up into three sections. The physical, the mental, and the spiritual at the end. So this poem is just getting into the spiritual. So it's about 2/3 of the way through the journey. And by going through characters and not the eye, it gave me a distance to work with. This is called, it's a little bit long, but it's not too long, maybe 3 minutes. Among the core-fired ashes of faith. The only lead in I'll get is there's also this, you're at the highest part of the journey. So you're in the mountains coming down into the Compostela. And there's an iron cross there set up held up by a stack of stones. And pilgrims are supposed to lay a stone on the stack, which represents leaving their sins behind. But the pilgrims have taken that a step further. They followed a pebbled road along an untiled mud brick wall guarding a red earth field. Bougainvillea shrouded the home on the corner, the trail winding into mountains that smoldered with purple and gold flowering shrubs. Anne and Fred walked ahead of Harv as slate homes appeared, then disappeared as they ascended past fonts of mirrored water reflecting sky, the sheep as landscape to themselves. A black horse in a dale swishes its tail, nips at flies. Near the summit, a thin pole rose from a stockade of stone. If these were sin, then there was more here than the foundations of any church. The girl in front of them placed a rock on a ledge and fell against the fence. She sobbed uncontrollably as a man at Anne's side collapsed, eyes closed. Prayer spilled from his mouth as his friends tried to lift him, but he was liquid. A shadow detached from the road, a storm pushed by wind. Juan climbed the unstable stack, laid a hand on the staff of the cross and wailed as if the world seared his iron heart. Fred, strolling among the anointed, turned this way and that, the weight of his daughter's ashes shed from his shoulders the way a crown of birds leave a roost, and stared as pilgrims kept coming, adding mementos to the cold furnace of loss. She turned, "Can we go?" The way wound down and onward. freshly rent from the rains that had torn the hillside open.
For
Thank
a
you.
moment, I was there with
Yeah.
you.
Very much so.
Wow, so
Thank you.
very intense, very
Powerful last line.
powerful.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Without a few additional metaphors to explain the action, that was pretty close to the experience of. It's a very spiritual spot, that one. I guess one of the nicknames for it is Noble Gate, but it's quite an experience. Well, the whole Camino
Noble Gate
was.
to what? Noble Gate.
Sorry?
To spirituality. Noble
Yes.
Gate.
Mm-hmm.
To change something. Yeah, to cross the line into something. It's a beautiful metaphor.
Well,
It is.
and it's how emotional some people are at that, doing that small thing of leaving a little stone. It's pretty amazing.
And it's growing and growing.
Yeah, it's huge.
Perhaps, Laurence and Eva, perhaps we could hear a couple poems from each of you right now.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think I will start with poem at the beginning of our relationship, which I wrote, and it's a prediction of love coming. Full moon. I see the moon burning the skin of the night, full of fire, and I'm coming towards you from the dark ages, from the walls of the icebergs, from insanely distant planets, to finish love song. I could see from far away the night, her sleepless eyes closed with pleasure, reclaiming with us the land of paradise. Now, I'm the crisp flesh of an apple standing on the palm of your hand. There is sometimes a reward for lovers' madness.
Alicia, can you change the screen? I think it was on Keith.
Oh, don't worry. I can see you both.
So that will, okay.
It won't, what I see is what's being recorded. Yeah, you don't have to worry about.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was saying Keith and listen to Eva. Okay, that's good.
So your response, Laurence, to my invitation that I come in towards you
Okay.
right now from distant planets. So that's why how I imagine a woman not only giving Adam apple, but being apple in his palm.
Well, the apple was a perfect metaphor for sure.
Yeah, for Eve, for sure.
Also, just a quick note. We
So
are
I'm going to read a song for Kohanya.
Wait.
sorry. We are coming up on our time limit, so Laurence, we'll have enough time for your poem, and then I'll wrap everything up.
Okay. So Kohanya is love in Polish. Song for Kohanya. I want you to be eccentric as a seahorse, curvaceous as a mermaid, secret as secret amber. Eva, my words are searching for you. I imagine you walking along twilight sands, and I follow the path. My daring artist, poet, mischievous rebel, tell me who you are when in the darkness I feel the lightness of your being, opening my lips to pleasure. Wild maiden, let our bed become a boat rocking the waves.
Thank you all. That was great. So unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. So I want to thank all three of you so much for taking the time to meet with me today and to speak with us and to show us a little bit about what it's like in your minds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia.
Yes, thank you very much.
For sharing with us your beautiful journey.
Oh, thank you for sharing your poems. I seem to have lost my video, but I can still hear everybody.
That's good. We can still see you. So a special thank you to all the people watching from home. You're all the reason why we do what we do. And a reminder that if you'd like to purchase any of the books we mentioned today, Fire and Water by Laurence and Eva, and The Way History Dries by Keith, visit your local chapters or any of your local independent booksellers, or there will be some links at the end of this video where you can purchase these books. So stay safe, and we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.